Today I want to talk about something that's been a problem for me for as long as I can remember. Something that's made it hard for me to have relationships, and that's caused me a lot of pain. This video is going to be incredibly personal, and I'm going to share some things that I've never shared here before. So I'm a little bit nervous, so please be kind. I want to talk about rejection-sensitive dysphoria. Rejection-sensitive dysphoria is when an actual or perceived rejection causes an overwhelming emotional response. It's an extreme emotional sensitivity triggered by rejection or criticism. It can also be triggered by feeling that you have failed to meet up to your own or other people's expectations. It's not an official disorder, so you can't be diagnosed with it, and it's not a recognised condition. I first heard about RSD when I was researching ADHD because there appears to be a link between ADHD and RSD, although it's not officially included in the ADHD diagnostic criteria. However, it is possible to experience it when you don't have ADHD, and not everyone with ADHD will experience it. The reasons for the link between ADHD and RSD are unclear at this point, but it could be because for people with ADHD, our central nervous system tends to overreact to things from the outside world. So it naturally follows that our brains might be overreacting in this way to rejection. Also, RSD is a manifestation of emotional dysregulation, which is a feature of ADHD because of difficulties with executive functioning. Researchers estimate that by the age of 12, children with ADHD have received 20,000 more negative messages from the world than their neurotypical peers. Experiencing all of this rejection just for being ourselves could lead to a sensitivity to rejection. Additionally, serious trauma like abuse and neglect can make the symptoms even worse. Something that I can relate to, but talking about this would be incredibly private and involve talking about other people, so I don't feel that I can do that. So all that I can say is that I do carry some trauma that would leave me sensitive to rejection and cause me to experience extreme reactions to that emotion. When I first heard about RSD, it was like a light bulb moment for me. I have struggled with painful feelings around rejection and not being good enough all my life. It has been difficult to carry these feelings, and the knowledge that I don't react typically has on its own left me feeling less than and incapable. I'm going to try and describe how it feels, but please bear with me because it can be difficult to articulate these kinds of feelings. Basically, I start every new relationship, whether personal or professional, with the assumption that the other person is probably not going to like me. I assume that my way of being is unpalatable and that this person, like so many before them, is likely to reject me for being too much. Or if they're kind enough, they won't outright reject me, but instead they'll put up such rigid boundaries that they are keeping their contact with me to an absolute minimum. This is particularly the case when it comes to groups of people. During my life, I've had to deal with group socialising, both professionally and personally, multiple times. Starting with school, then university, then circus school, and then the circus community who I worked and trained with for many years. Next, I dealt with parent socialising, antenatal groups, toddler classes, and school-run socialising. Finally, I am now part of a group of people working in neurodivergence. And there are professional conferences and work situations that I have to deal with there too. And the common thread through all of this is the feeling that I don't belong and I'm not accepted. Yes, even among my neurodivergent peers, I feel like the one that people won't like and won't want to spend time with. It doesn't seem likely that I've actually been rejected by all of these groups. It's more likely that this feeling of being an outsider is perceived and part of my own internal dialogue. So I sit on the edge of groups, feeling rejected, which is incredibly painful. Or I throw myself into fun Ella mode and work really hard to be someone that might be accepted as part of the group, and I leave feeling stressed and overloaded and like I've put on a massive performance. It's an especially hard feeling when you feel like you're too much for groups that are all about being yourself or about embracing and accepting marginalised people. When you feel rejected by those groups, where do you go? Fortunately, despite these difficulties, I have managed to form and maintain some close personal relationships. I'm lucky to have an incredibly loving and supportive husband and a small group of close, wonderful friends. Those people have managed to break through my anxieties about being rejected and not being good enough. I've been able to relax a little bit and enjoy the feeling of being connected to someone. but it's never completely comfortable, and the feeling that they might reject me in the future doesn't ever go away. Once I've broken the initial barriers to having that relationship, the stakes become even higher. I care more now, so the rejection that might come would be even more painful. At this point, I am extremely vulnerable. I'm worrying that once they get to know me better, they will realise that, after all, I am unlikable. Once this barrier has been passed, I worry that they're only spending time with me now because they feel obligated, or that they do like me, but the burden of being around me will become too much and they will end up walking away. This can be frustrating for the people around me, particularly my husband, Mr. Purple, who has known and loved me for over 20 years now. He's told me that by now I should feel confident that he loves me and won't walk away, that he's told me he loves me many times, and his actions should also demonstrate that. And they do, and it's not fair on him. But I've told him I'm not sure it's possible for me to ever feel completely secure. I've certainly never felt that way in any relationship in my life so far. Even when it comes to Coco, my service dog, which is the easiest relationship I've ever had, I'm still not completely secure. Dogs are great. The love she shows me is incredibly soothing. She's super excited to see me when I've been away from her, and she's always giving me loads of snuggles and love. However, occasionally she will choose to hang out with Mr. Purple instead. She might want to follow him around for the day or go to him for her snuggles for whatever reason. And that's fine, or at least it should be fine. But that's when the doubt starts to creep in. Perhaps she'd rather be with him than with me. Recently, I've noticed that when we are working in our shared office together and she's hanging out in there too, if I leave, she will quite often stay in the office with Mr. Purple, but if he leaves, she will nearly always go with him. This triggers my insecurities. But then Mr. Purple said that it's because, usually when he leaves our office, it's because he's going to prepare lunch for us all. And she's following him because she knows this, and she always wants to be in the kitchen when there might be food. She loves food more than anyone or anything, and I accept that. Obviously, this totally explains why, and I feel so silly feeling this way, even about my dog. These are some of the potential consequences for people experiencing rejection-sensitive dysphoria. You may become a people pleaser, bending yourself into whatever shape you think people want, or never saying no to anything for fear of upsetting anyone. It could lead to you being overly controlling in relationships to avoid getting hurt, having unrealistic and unreasonable expectations of the other person. For example, expecting instant replies to your texts, or feeling stressed when your partner makes social arrangements without you because it makes you feel rejected. Having self-esteem which is dependent on what other people think about you, so feeling on top of the world because a relationship's going well, or feelings of self-loathing because something's gone wrong or you think something's gone wrong. Post-social interaction catastrophizing. For example, spending time with a friend and then going home and worrying about all the ways that you might have got it wrong. I used to send text messages apologising for my behaviour after nearly every social meetup. I've gotten a lot better at coping with my RSD, particularly since I was diagnosed with autism and ADHD, and I've started to understand why I might be a little bit different to other people. Partly also due to having some amazing people in my life who are helping me learn to navigate these kinds of relationships in a healthy way. And partly because I'm starting to recognise when I'm experiencing rejection sensitivity, and I'm able to respond to that now instead of the perceived rejection. So, this is my advice for coping with rejection sensitive dysphoria. Recognising and knowing that you experience RSD might help you to manage things better. And as with all things, this will take time and practice. One thing that I do is to try and examine my feelings and where they're coming from. So for example, one thought pattern might be, this person didn't reply quickly to my text message. That means that they don't like me anymore, they're avoiding me, and they're probably going to end our relationship soon. So I'll look at that thought pattern and think, what could the other explanations for their lack of reply be? Maybe something's going on in their lives right now that's distracting them, or maybe they're just really busy, or maybe they lost their phone. There's plenty of other reasons for a lack of text. I don't need to automatically go straight to they hate me now. Or perhaps they just meant to reply and forgot. I think we can all relate to that one. Going through the process of considering all the possible reasons to explain the situation that aren't rejection helps me to be rational rather than reactive. It doesn't always work and it's not always possible, but I'm now much better able to cope with late texts and other perceived rejections. In fact, it also gave me permission to deal with my texts when I want to, rather than feeling that I have to drop everything straight away and respond immediately. Understanding that not everyone will like me, and that is really freeing. Some people will like me and other people won't, and that is true for everyone. Sometimes it can feel like you're the only one being rejected. Realising that everyone experiences rejection sometimes can make it less of a big deal. Working on my self-esteem and separating it from other people's perception of me. I can like myself when others don't is a really freeing idea. I'm enjoying starting to look at myself as someone who can be herself and love herself from the inside out without needing validation or approval from others to know that she is enough. Distraction techniques can be really useful too if I'm experiencing an episode of RSD. Throwing myself into one of my interests, or a nice warm bath or a snuggle with Coco, can make me feel better and make the episode less intense and shorter. Once I'm done with my distraction, I often feel more rational. Finally, while I was researching this video, I came across some medication options for treating RSD. I'm not going to get into that because I'm not a medical professional, but I mention it in case you want to research that as a potential option for you. I hope you found this video useful. If you experience rejection-sensitive dysphoria, you have my full sympathy. It's one of the more painful aspects of being neurodivergent, and I get it. Please hit the like button if you did like this video. I make videos every week on the topic of neurodiversity and disability, so if you'd like to hear more from me, then also please consider subscribing to my channel. If you'd like to support me financially as a creator, then check the description box for the ways in which you can do that. It's what makes it possible for me to make this content. Thanks for watching. Goodbye!